Hi everyone and welcome to the Coco and Flora channel. My name is Eva and I am a knitter, a stitcher, a maker and merchant. I've changed my introduction a little bit there because I got this catalogue through the post from DT Brown Seeds and they said growers and merchants, and I thought it was lovely and old-fashioned. And although I am not currently merching in my shop, I do want to open it again soon, so I'm coining it now, maker and merchant. So welcome to April's video. This is going to be a chat through some of the things that I have knit and sewn during April 2024. I'm going to start with a quick mention of a dressmaking project. There's more about this on my Patreon blog, which is on the free level. You don't need to pay to read it. And it's the Ruby top by Made by Ray. I've got the pattern here. I've made lots and lots of these. I often make them with sleeves, which I get from a free pattern piece for another dress from this company, which is the Trillium dress, and there's a blog post about it with free sleeves. But I made this one sleeveless, and I originally made this bottom part with a yellow gingham cotton, and it didn't look very nice, so I changed it and put this viscose on it. They're really lovely tops. I make the size large. It's a really good size range. It goes from XXS to XL and plus sizes 1 to 3. So it's a good range of sizes, and this is going to be really lightweight and lovely for the sunny weather. I lined the inside on the top part of the yoke, but then I still had to bias bind the lower armholes, so it wasn't worth going to all the fuss to do the burrito lining method, which I always have to watch a YouTube tutorial because I can't get it stuck in my mind. But I wanted to use this lovely Heather Ross frog fabric because the same pattern company has brought out a new top called the Garnet, which is similar to this but with a square neckline, and it had a sample made up in this fabric, so I was inspired to have a go with the pattern that I've got. I'll put in some cutaway footage or a photograph if I can, so you can see what it looks like on. I'm glad that I changed it because I did go into a bit of a creative funk when it all went wrong. And this was sort of at the start of the month, and it's been a weird month creatively. I have made stuff, but I've been slightly off track, if you know what I mean, and I think that just happens sometimes, doesn't it? I think it's a normal part of the creative cycle, just like the seasons. I think there needs to be a winter where it feels like nothing's happening. I felt like I would never have an original idea ever again, but I think that's like the winter when the seeds are in the ground, not appearing to be doing anything, but the flowers will bloom again. So I think I'm getting my mojo back a little bit now towards the end of the month. So that's the Ruby top. I've actually made loads of these and it probably won't be the last, so I'm glad that I overcame the little blip when the cotton that I'd used before was really thick, so it just stuck out and didn't drape nicely. I think this is a pattern that definitely needs a drapey fabric. I got the viscose from Sew Me Sunshine, and I think it was a dead stock fabric, and I think it was by the metre rather than a remnant, and yeah, hopefully it will come in handy during the warm weather that I'm anticipating. So that was me trying to get back on the dressmaking horse with mixed results, and next it's on to some knitting. So after I'd finished my Ruby top, some lovely yarn arrived in the form of a present from a lovely friend of mine. Thank you so much if you're watching. We exchange parcels sometimes, and she sent me this 150 gram ball of DK weight yarn, and it's by West Yorkshire Spinners. It's called Colour Lab, and this is the colourway Punk, and there's a few of them and they're named after different kind of music genres, and it's 75% British wool, 25% nylon. There's a QR code on the ball band that takes you to a free pattern, but the pattern called for 3.5mm needles, and I've got a lovely pair of 3.25 sock needles for DK. Oh, they're here actually. These are the Leica driftwood needles, and I really like to use those for socks, so I just used the Crazy Sock Ladies DK Vanilla sock pattern, which is a free pattern, and I made these. They're really cozy. I've tried them on, but I haven't worn them around the house yet, but I think they'll be lovely, and it knits up in a really fun colourway. I did heel flap and gusset as the pattern calls for, which is not what I usually do. I usually do an afterthought heel, but it's nice to do it on the DK socks where there are less stitches, so I can get more proficient at it without loads and loads of stitches. So they've come out ever so slightly bigger than the only other pair of DK socks I've got for myself, but I didn't use a double knit yarn for those. I used 2 strands of fingering held together, so I don't know if that's made a difference or whether this sock yarn is just slightly thicker, but they stay up and everything, and they're really cozy and comfortable. So that wasn't something that I was planning to make this month, but I did it really quickly. It took me 2 or 3 days because they knit up so fast. I do the middle size of that pattern, which is casting on 48 stitches. So that's Punk by West Yorkshire Spinners. The ball must actually have weighed 159 grams because I weighed the socks and they came in at 89 grams, and I've still got 70 grams left, so I could knit a slightly shorter pair. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with the leftovers yet, but there's plenty, and I'm keeping those in a new bag that I've made. I said I wanted a project bag to put my crochet rows on last time, and I thought, oh, I'll just make myself a new one. So I've used some of the leftovers from my Ruby Star Dresden quilt that I'm making, and I've made a quilt block and put it with some nice brown cotton linen blend, and it's lined inside with some Ruby Star that I didn't use for my quilt in the end. So I think those fabrics go really nicely together, and it's been a lovely project bag to use this month. And I sewed a little bow tab on the end of the zipper. The next knitted thing that I've got to show you is actually a finished object. I've finished my Love Note sweater. And here it is. Again, I will put in some cutaway footage of me wearing this. I made the size small, which technically I should have made the medium for me if I was sticking to the recommended ease, which is 4 to 12 inches, so quite a lot of ease, and I didn't want it to be huge, and I'm also slightly smaller here than I am in the full bust, so if I'm between sizes I would tend to go down to the small. I will say that there's not a lot of ease at all. It's quite close fitting. It's not too small, but if you wanted some ease, it's probably best to stick to the recommended size, because I can report that I did by some fluke get gauge on this pattern. I've measured it after blocking, and I think the gauge is 16 stitches for 4 inches and about, I think, 23 rows or 24 rows, but I've got 16 stitches over 4 inches, so it's true to size. And I should say this is a pattern by Tin Can Knits. It's a double knit weight, but you achieve that, or it's suggested that you achieve that with a strand of mohair and a strand of fingering weight yarn. I dyed the fingering weight yarn myself, and let's see, how much have I got left of that? I've got 77 grams left of the fingering weight yarn, so Didn't use much of that second skein at all. And with the mohair, I used 2 full 25 grams of mohair, and I just dipped into the third one and used 2 grams. So I've got loads of that left too. This is the Drops Kid Silk Mohair in the Marzipan colourway. Really happy with the fabric that they combined to make. I did alternate skeins for the main body, but it was a right royal pain because every time I had to switch them over, I had to untangle the ball several times from the mohair. So when I got to the bottom, there are short rows at the back, I stopped bothering to alternate, didn't alternate for the rib, and I used a different ball for each sleeve. And I don't think, probably because of the mohair softening everything, I don't think it's made any difference at all. I really love the little green pops that have come into this. I've gotten into the habit when I sew a jumper of embroidering a little rose in the back to show that it's the back, but instead of getting embroidery floss, I just used the long tails because that was the beginning of the round, and just instead of weaving them in, I made a little rose. I'm not sure how I feel about the short rows at the back. I'm not sure, I don't get it because I feel like my bust has raised the front, and so I don't know why I need to lower the back anymore. I'm not sure what I'm missing about that, so I don't think I'd put them in if I were to knit it again, and I would knit it again. I think I went a little bit beyond the recommended length for cropped. I probably added another 1.5 inches, maybe a bit more, and I measured that against a Lento sweater that I've got because I like the length of that, and I did stick to the sleeve length, which is, it's not even 3/4, I think it's probably a little bit shorter than 3/4, so that's probably how come I've used so little yarn. But I'm really excited to wear that. I don't know what I'm going to wear it with. I think I'll probably have to make some clothes to go with it. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with 77 grams of leftovers. I did think about making a pair of socks, but you'll see why later. I might not do that. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do with all of this. I did use the recommended needle size, which I think is a 6mm, and then maybe 4.5 for the ribbing, but whatever is in the pattern is what I used, and I would absolutely knit it again. It was really fun. And now for a quick update on my garter stitch blanket. This is it's just under my chair here. This is a double knit weight blanket, which I'm doing with bits and bobs of fingering weight leftovers held together with a 500 gram fingering weight yarn cone, which I didn't quite like the ivory colour, so I divided that up into 5 hanks of yarn and dyed it different shades of brown, quite by accident, and then I carried on knitting it. And I've just got onto this second brown skein of yarn, so I thought that would be a good point at which to show you my progress. So it's getting quite big now. I've measured it, it's about 50 centimetres tall, I guess would be the word. You can see the brown here, that was the original project, so I put that onto waste yarn and dyed all the rest of the skeins and then carried on. So it's a bit of a jump because I went straight to a very pale yarn, but I think it will all even out in the end, and I've just been picking really lovely lighter colours to go ahead with. So they're not very dark brown, the base yarns, as you can see. That's the second one that I've just started to knit with, and I'm holding it at the moment with the tester skein from when I dyed my Love Note yarn. I put in a little 20 gram mini to see how it would come out, and it was a bit dark, so I changed it. So I'm doing those together, and that's how that's knitting up. It's really fun. I've tried to measure the width as best as I can while it's still on the needles, and it's about 170 centimetres wide. So it's very approximate, but if this is a fifth of the blanket, it should be well over 2 meters tall, so it should be a nice rectangular shape. I hope. I was a bit worried I was going to have to get even more base yarn to hold in to make it tall enough because it's so wide, but I think it's going to be okay. So I'll show you it again when I get onto the third skein of yarn, and that way I won't be coming back with progress reports when there's not much happening with it. So you never know, it could have doubled by the next time I show you. Next I have a new cast on to show you. My thoughts are turning to summer makes, and this is something that I have been wanting to knit for several years, and every year I don't get around to it. And it's the Boardwalk blouse by Poison Girls. Editing Eva here just to add in all of the things that podcasting Eva forgets to tell you. I just want to show you a picture of the Boardwalk blouse by Amy Appel of the Poison Girls. I've had a project bag set up for it for literally years, and every so often I will change the choice of yarn that's in there, but I finally settled on something. And again, it's a couple of yarns that I dyed myself, one of them from years ago and one of them I think is maybe a couple of years old. So I've got this lovely scarlet red colour, and it's a really nice orangey red, which I prefer to a more bluey red. I really like a nice vibrant red, and I'm using that, striping it with this pink yarn. There's a lot of bare or much paler yarn in here, so it's more of a strawberries and cream kind of effect. I don't know if that's what I was going for, if it's just the way it came out when I was learning how to dye. And I am knitting the medium size of this, and here's how it is. You can use any variation of stripes that you want. You could do thick block stripes or whatever you wanted, but this is how it says in the pattern, which is every so often you break it up with two rows of stripe of contrast colour. I really like the way that they are knitting up together. This is the second start for me. I use the recommended needles, which are 3.25. I'm a terrible swatcher. What I do is I start my project, I knit a while, then I measure the gauge, and if it's not quite right, I stretch it out a bit and say that's probably how it will be if I blocked it, and then I carry on that basis. But with this one, even if I didn't stretch it at all, it was still much too big, and it hasn't got sleeves. It's just sort of the knitting finishes about here, and it was down here as I stretched it across myself before this merino wool had ever even been blocked, so it was huge. And when I looked at it, I didn't even like the fabric. It was a really loose fabric. I'd done a messy cast on. This is the neckline, so it does need to be quite tidy, and the pattern calls for a long tail cast on, and it's one of those things that I think I tried to do it when I had less experience as a knitter. I've been knitting since 2017, so it's a really quite a long time, but I feel like a very inexperienced knitter because it seems to take me a long time to pick things up. And I tried to do the long tail cast on, and I always needed to watch a tutorial to do it, and it didn't stick in my brain. So when I cast this on a second time, I watched the Wool and the Gang tutorial on YouTube, which was the only one that ever made sense to me. But now I have got it and I know how to do it without the tutorial, so I think it's worth coming back to things, because with a little bit more experience under my belt, it's clicked. I think I'm just like, sometimes I'm a really fast learner and I take information in so quickly, but then in another way I can be really slow for something to click. It's funny. So I'm really glad that I did start again, and this was about how much I'd knit the first time, and now I'm catching up to where I was. So you knit the front, Then I think you knit the back and then you join under the sleeves to go round for the rest of the body. So I'm looking forward to getting to that point where it's just nice round and round knitting. And I hope that will be a lovely summer t-shirt. It is merino. These are both, I'm not sure where I got the bases from, but they're both just standard 25% superwash merino, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. So hopefully that will be okay for a British summertime. I'm not quite sure what the needles are, but they're wooden ones, 3mm. And because it's such a small project, I think it will stay in this little project bag quite happily. I've got my gauge swatch in there. So yeah, that's going to be one of the main things that I'm going to be knitting on in May. And now it's on to some yarn that has come into my life. I did not really have the intention to buy it. I did not really have the budget for it, but I bought it anyway. I really like this thing that Lay Family Yarn are doing in collaboration with other podcasters, and I get so much enjoyment from watching everyone else's podcasts. I just feel I'd really like to support this, and also the yarn is beautiful. So I did go ahead and buy some Durkle yarn, which is dyed in collaboration with Lay Family Yarns and Gaynor of the Tales of Cuckooland podcast. And I sort of killed two birds with one stone because I wanted to support the yarn, and I also needed 2 skeins of the same yarn to knit the PimPom shawl by Laura Penrose. I bought that pattern as soon as it came out, and then I read it and thought, oh, I need 2 of the same. And I do have 2 skeins of the same hand-dyed yarn, but I'm saving that for something else. So I got 2 of these. It's a lovely pale pink background with pale blue or pale red and blue speckles. The light is quite harsh today. It's quite sunny, so I hope you can see that okay, but it's very, very beautiful. And you have to hold those double for the main body of the shawl. And then I was going back and forth with what to do for the border because of that quite thick scalloped border that's made with short rows. I'm a little bit nervous about doing that. I can do short rows, but I'm nervous about finding the time to have the exam conditions I need to do complicated knitting. So I hope that will go okay. Having blown the budget to buy that yarn, I didn't really want to buy more yarn for the border, but I really fancied having a bright pop. I fancied some hot pink, and I do have some hot pink, but I don't have enough. These are 2 50-gram balls, but I appear to have knit a little bit out of both of them. I'll just get one of those yarns so you can see. And I wasn't sure if they would go together, but I knew I really wanted some hot pink. But what I did have enough of, and I think I've dropped one, I did have enough of this, which is Drops Nord. I've got 150 grams, and this is a wool, alpaca and nylon blend yarn, and this is the blush colourway. And it goes really nicely with this. If I were a mature and sensible adult, I think that would be a beautiful shawl. And I was going back and forth. I want this, but I don't have enough. I do have enough of this, but I don't really want it. And I don't know when I'm going to learn that the answer is always both. And I'm in Laura Penrose's Patreon, and there's a lovely chat feature now, and people are posting pictures of their projects, and somebody had posted a picture of their PimPom shawl, and they had done the bobbles in a different colour to the rest of the border. So I'm going to use this for the main body of the shawl, these for the bobbles, and these for the border. So I think that solves all of the problems. It's mature and sensible, it's tasteful, it's also got a silly pop of neon, and I've got enough yarn to do all the things. So hopefully I can cast that on in the near future and show you some progress on that next time. But what do you think? Do you think that might make a nice combination? What colours would you choose? I would love to know. So that's the PimPom shawl in Hurkle Durkle yarn. I don't know if it's David Tennant, and I don't know if it's when he's being Doctor Who, but there's this thing that he says, like Yikkity dooh, Yikkity daah, and whenever I think about making the PimPom in Hurkle Durkle, that's what I think about. So that's going to be super fun in all ways, and for sure I'm keeping it in a pink project bag. And did I stop there on my yarn buying spree? No, I did not, because then Lay Family Yarns did another collaboration with another podcaster, and I really wanted to support that too. So this is Sunkissed Succulents, dyed in collaboration with Sandra of the Cherry Hearts podcast. And this is why I might not use my Love Note leftovers to make socks, because I think that these will go really nicely. I'm going to use this. This is a DK that I've got. It's 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, 100 grams, 225 meters, double knit yarn. And I think it goes quite nicely with my Love Note. So if ever I wanted an outfit that had matching socks, I think this will be perfect. So I'm going to again just make, I think, a vanilla pair of socks from this beautiful yarn, and this is a lovely sagey green with sort of rusty coloured speckles. So that's most of what I had to show you today. Stick around if you want to see some rare footage of April, and I also have a little bit of news to tell you about Coco and Flora, my shop, which closed. I had to close it. It was sometime after the second lockdown. Sales had slowed anyway as a result of all that, and my partner had been made redundant, and we had to move 150 miles away for his new job, and I needed to pack up my house, get it ready for selling, decorate, and my business went by the wayside. And even though we've lived in our new house for 18 months, it's only just now that I'm getting round to getting back on track again. So I'm really hoping to open my shop within the next few weeks. I'm 50 on the 7th of June, so I feel like that would be a great time to launch a new phase in life. And there's a lot to do because I don't want to sell on Etsy anymore, and I want to move over to Shopify, and I'm procrastinating doing all the technical learning that I need to do to sort that out. So I thought maybe I could delegate a little bit. So I thought, how am I going to advertise for some help? And I thought, well, I'll just put it out there to the universe. I need some help. So I did that, and sure enough, the very next day I was sitting at my sewing machine, and I glanced out of the window, and I saw this chap standing on the patio, twisting his flat cap in his hands and looking nervous. So I opened the door, and he said he was here about the job. So we had a cup of tea together, and I explained to him that I needed some technical support with certain aspects of my business, and he said that that was not really his wheelhouse. And I was a little bit taken aback, so I asked him what he could bring to the table for Coco and Flora, and he said that he could quite literally bring cakes and treats to the table, that he could be no help with IT whatsoever, but that when 11s rolled around, I would be really glad that he had joined the team. So I hired him immediately, and he has turned out to be quite the asset, and I wondered if you'd like to meet him. So would you like to come and say hi to everybody? Okay. So everybody, this is Coco, and he has joined my team. I'm sure that you have seen this pattern. This is by DotPebbles, and I think the patterns are available on Ravelry, but I buy them via the Etsy shop, and it's well worth a look because there are loads of beautiful patterns for lots of really cute creatures. You can get the pattern for the jumper as well, and I have knit this one a lot smaller than gauge. The recommended needle size is 3.5 millimeters, but Coco here is knit on 2.5 millimeters, and I have also omitted the strand of mohair, and the reason I've done that is because I really need him to work with Sylvanian family size furniture. So, and I think he does. He's a really sweet little size. I knit him out of drops gnawed in the forest green colourway, and his jumper is a little mini from Beehive Yarns, and he really does make exceedingly good cakes, so he's really a great asset to the company so far. I'll show you, I've got actually the first frog I ever made here with a 3.5 millimeter needle, so I'll show you the difference. This is Kyle. He's the first frog I ever made. He doesn't work for the company, but you can see he's a lot bigger than Coco. I've made quite a few of these because I've made them for my children and as gifts and things. They are not a difficult knit at all, but they are quite fiddly, and I think I've probably made it more fiddly by doing it on such a tiny needle. But if you haven't made one, I think they're well worth checking out. You can read more about Coco and his origin story on my Patreon blog, which will be coming out on the first Friday of May. Absolutely free to read. You just have to join the free membership and you can read it. I do also have a paid membership with monthly vlogs and more detailed looks at my monthly makes, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more of Coco in the future. I do think I'm going to have to re-advertise because I do still need a little bit more practical help around the place, but I'm very glad that he's here. He's a lovely guy, and hopefully you'll see him again soon. That's all from me. Thank you ever so much for watching. It's lovely to chat with you, and I'll see you again really soon. Until then, have a lovely time with whatever you're making. Bye for now.